One ready? Okay. We are going to go ahead and call the Wednesday, June 24th Special Property and Finance Committee meeting to order. We'll just go around quick and introduce ourselves. I'll start to my right.
Dane Blazer, Mayor.
Jennifer Gossick, City Clerk.
Tom Reham, District 4 Alderman.
Scott Kellogg, District 3 Alderman.
Dean Veneman, District 2 Alderman.
Paul Ballard, Public Works Superintendent.
And if Dustin, we'll start with you in the back.
Dustin Gesser, Street Department Supervisor. Terry, Director of Public Works.
Okay.
Chief Pleasant, PD.
Jay Bemke, District 8.
Thad Kubitschek, District 7, also committee member of the Finance and Property Committee.
Steve Koth, District 5 Alderman and Chairman of the committee. All right, our first business item this evening is review and consider a request from the Street Department to approve proposals from truck vendors to replace a quad axle dump truck that is considered a total loss due to an accident. Paul?
Good evening. On May 15th, one of our multi-axle truck drivers was in a two-vehicle accident that he was pulled out in front of by a semi-truck, and due to that accident, the insurance company deemed the vehicle a total loss. So the vehicle is a crucial tool for us during our construction season, which we are full swing into. And in speaking with different truck vendors, it's going to take, if we were to do the proposals and bid out process, it would take us plus 9 months to receive a truck, which would make it somewhat difficult on us with our chip sealing program and construction program. And so I talked to various vendors in the area, and the list is in front of you of the trucks that are available on the ground per se and or available to be built. And I also spoke with the box installers, because you got the truck vendors who sell the truck and chassis, and then you have the vendors who put the boxes on them and or axles. The truck manufacturers, like I say, there's a couple of them that have cabin chassis that are on the ground. But then there's a 3-4 month waiting list from the body manufacturers to get those installed into the cabin chassis. We, in our fleet already, we have both Sterling's and Western Star trucks. It was a 7-year-old Western Star that was in the accident. We did look at other vendors. Everything said and done, we had people drive the other vehicles, and we had mechanics look at them and things like that. And it's our recommendation to purchase a 2020 Western Star from I-State Truck in Marshfield that has the Tough Track suspension on it. Some of the other ones on your list you'll see have an air ride suspension, which, a lot of the truck companies have air ride suspensions, but most of them do on-road trucking and not necessarily a lot of off-road trucking or construction type travel. And so in speaking with our mechanics and some other people that are in the industry, we really want to stay with the Tough Track suspension, just because it's a little bit, it can handle the wear and tear, and it's the same truck as everything that we have in the fleet. So if somebody were to be driving truck number 4 today and they jump in this new truck, they're not going to be having to think about something different. This truck would be built the exact same way of everything else that's in our fleet.
All right, so you're looking at the I-State truck here, and that's the one priced out for Marshfield for $174,500.
Yep, I'm sorry, apologize about that, Alderperson Coth. Yeah, the one that is cheaper, that is above it, at the time, they had it available, and because we couldn't give them a commitment to purchase it, they have it sold to a different vendor. So the unfortunate part is we missed out on that. We could have saved a little bit of money, but
All right, does anyone here have any questions for Paul? Go ahead, Thad.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. Paul, how dire is the need, or is this a truck that we use on a regular basis, or is it something that's kind of like parked in the garage until snow plowing season?
no, it is something that we use on a regular basis. We're 1 week into our construction project on Washington Street, so it's not like we're on the west side right next to the pit, so it's going to be a fair amount of trucking that's associated with that. We currently have 2 of our quad axle trucks and a tandem axle truck that's on that job. And it'd be nice to have all three quad axles on there and then still be able to have the 4th one for other projects that we have within the city, whether it's, our construction crew moves on to a different project and we have to finish up the construction project that we were on. So today we were hauling gravel to 2nd Avenue and up onto Wilson Street. And so it's just more economical to be running the quads around instead of the tandems.
Anyone else have anything for Paul? All right, hearing no other questions for Paul, and given that this is something that they do need and it was lost in an accident and we're financing it by insurance and then replacement fund, I will make a motion to go ahead and authorize the replacement of the truck from I-State Truck in Marshfield for a price not to exceed $174,500.
I'll second.
We have a motion and second. Is there any other further discussion on this item? Hearing none, committee will vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes have it. Our next item is consider a request from Alderperson Coth to suspend the city's open container ordinance on Thursdays through Saturdays from 3 p.m. to 11 p.m. from July 2nd, 2020 through September 5th, 2020 to allow the public outside of bars and restaurants to socially distance. This would be limited to beer and wine only, no hard liquor, in plastic or aluminum containers only. The city attorney sent out a email on this, so Sue, do you want to go first on this?
I can. Right, I guess this is an alternative to suspending the open container if the intent is to allow people to be in bars and restaurants and then to go outside and socially distance. So what some municipalities are doing is relaxing their ordinances regarding premises extensions and definitions of premises. And so usually what would happen if someone wanted to, well, actually we have an instance tonight where someone wants to expand their premises, and generally that would then be a meeting before financing property, then it would need to go to council. And as a general rule, we haven't been approving those when it goes onto public property, or at least you've been pretty judicious on whether to do that or not. And so this proposed ordinance, which is modeled after one in Green Bay, would, and this is just for a temporary period. Some cities are doing it just through the summer, some are doing it through the end of October, some are doing it through the end of the year, but allowing the a bar or restaurant owner, or basically anybody who has a Class B beer or Class B liquor or a combo license, which is most taverns and restaurants, could submit an application to the clerk to request to expand their premises either to their parking lot or maybe some other open land that they may have next to their premises, and also request, let's say they didn't have a lot of room next to their premises, that then we might consider expanding to the sidewalk or parking lot or parking area, just to allow these businesses to have a little more room and allow their patrons to exercise a little bit of social distancing. So it would be, what would be different about it, as I said, is that the clerk could just process those, assuming that, I guess we have in here that the PD, fire department, Public Works, I mean, there's the people that might be concerned about if it's on personal or on public property or not, that they can basically sign off. And then that would be valid until whatever date you would state. I think I put in here a proposed of November 1. So the ordinance is, I've attached a proposed ordinance and also a proposed application that could be used. I think this is what I could consider to be a better, maybe a better resolution than just suspending the open container, because that in and of itself is difficult to enforce in terms of people coming out of bars and then they can't go back in, and just kind of policing it all throughout the city. I think as long as each licensee can demonstrate the area that they want to use, and it's been vetted by city staff, that I think it would be easier to enforce and would be just something pretty business-friendly to do in these unprecedented times. So I didn't even have time to share it with staff because since the meeting was just kind of set last night here, and we weren't aware of exactly what was going to be on the agenda, so you might need more time to consider it, but I just thought I would put something together, and I don't know if anybody else has anything on it, any staff, or if you have any questions for me.
I got some questions for you there, Attorney Schill. With this, just looking over it quickly here at council, and I did get the email earlier this afternoon and looked at it, but we're saying in this application, any bar can go to the city clerk's office and they can ask for the premise extension, and the city clerk will then have that deciding power to issue the premise extension for their establishment, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. One of my concerns is for the social distancing, to be fair to the bar owners, some bars don't have, I mean, we kind of talked about it, some bars don't necessarily have parking lots of their own, nor do they have the same amount of frontage space as other bars do. For example, some of our bars in the downtown area just have, they're wedged in the buildings down there, and maybe have at best 60 feet of space in front of them for the sidewalks. So this would be beneficial for those bars to make this work for them. Would they be able to ask for an extension from street corner to street corner on the sidewalk to allow people to stand out there, or is that something that would have to be determined on a case-by-case basis?
I think that would be case by case, but I think in the ordinance is the ability to approve expansions onto public property, including sidewalks, maybe even parking stalls. So, I mean, I think it's kind of flexible in it, but it would really be case by case. I guess it would depend on, the obstructing of the sidewalk and what street it is, and but the thing is, though, each establishment would have its own licensed premises. It wouldn't be, so if you had two bars next to each other, they couldn't share premises because you can't have two licenses for the same premises. So each bar would have to kind of delineate what their area is. So, not sure if I answered your question or not, but.
No, you did. And then the other question I have for you is, in the initial referral that I sent, I was looking at doing this Thursday, Friday, and Saturdays, more towards the weekend from established hours, because as you know, you get closer to bar time, you run the risk of having problems and I didn't want to run us into that, but in this, I was looking for established times and dates, so my next question would be is if a bar owner applies for this premise extension, would this be something that they would get every day then, or just dates they requested, or like if they come to the clerk's office and say, I want to extend my premises to the sidewalk out in front of my bar and do this from the day it passed council until November 1st, is that count as their premise extension, or how would that work then?
The ordinance as it is written anticipates that it would be a temporary but exclusive expansion of their premises. But you bring up a good point, and this wasn't in the couple of ordinances that I looked at, but it would be possible as a part of this ordinance if you wanted to say, well, that, the outdoor, after 11 or after midnight, then there wouldn't be any more outdoor activity, or you could limit it to days of the week. I don't know what if people are going to be spending some money to kind of set up specific areas, and it might be cost prohibitive, or it might be difficult to move things in and out if there's seating and such. But I think that's certainly something to think about in terms of setting limits on the hours of operation, or and I know our sidewalk cafe ordinance does have limits in terms of, I think it's midnight, that you can no longer be outside with those that have sidewalk cafes, which I don't think anyone has one at this time. But that's certainly something that we could put in the ordinance, or that might be part of the discretion of the clerk to establish, depending on the location and the use of especially if it's public property. That would certainly be a concern in terms of obstructing the sidewalk continuously for 6 months.
Yeah, because when I put this together, I was kind of looking for like a one-size-fits-all, where we could just, if somebody wanted to go to the bar, get their beer, stand outside, have their beer, and if they decided to go home, if they live close proximity to a bar, we didn't have to worry about boundaries. But I understand the need to go through the clerk's office as well, and if this is something where if a bar wanted to participate in this and get their premises extension and do it every day of the week, I would be okay with that as well, just as long as we had some set hours, so we're not doing this up until 2:30 in the morning. I'd have to look. I believe Stevens Point cutoff time was 10 p.m. 7, but I thought 11. Just having it kind of more towards those normal hours would be beneficial. But I'll see if anyone else wants to speak on this here.
I'd like to speak if that's okay.
Okay, Jake, I had Thad throw his hand up here quick, and then I'll get to you, okay?
All right, sounds good.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. Jesus Christ, every time. Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. The one thing, I guess, that I'm not seeing in this ordinance is what happens if there is a violation, because it's supposed to be only beer and wine. But if I got a Long Island iced tea, how is anybody going to be able to really discern if I'm walking out with that? So then the question is, are we actually have an intention of patrolling this, or is it going to be an on-your-honor type of a situation? So then if it is an on-your-honor type of situation, I'm not necessarily specific, I'm just preemptively saying this, people that use alcohol, and I've been in that position myself, make not the best judgments and different things and whatever else. So then if there's a violation, does the person holding the drink get the violation? Does the tavern get the violation? What if there's now 20 different violations that occur at one establishment? Is there teeth in here that we can remove a specific extension that was granted either through the body or through the clerk's office? And I don't want to be kind of a stickler on policy, but, we got to consider these what ifs, because this isn't like a church youth group type of a concept. It's alcohol, and that there's reasons why we have strict state statutes and local ordinances on alcohol because of the decision-making after you've had 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 drinks at one time. So how will that work? And I don't know, Ms. Schill, if you want to chime in, or how, I'm just kind of brainstorming this.
Sure.
Right now.
There is a revocation that the clerk may revoke the expansion if they violated any of our local ordinances regarding alcohol or state ordinances. Regarding the type of alcohol, this would be an expansion of their premises, so whatever their license is for, it's just like the bar now includes that area. So there would be no prohibition regarding intoxicating liquor. It would include intoxicating liquor just the same as if they were inside there or within their normal premises. When we talk about suspending open container, that is only for situations where, because under state law, you can carry out beer in an unopened in an open container, I should say, but you cannot carry out intoxicating liquor it has to be in a sealed package. So that's why when we're talking about suspending the open container, which is different than expanding your premises, that we talk about beer only, because you can't carry out, and you can't give permission for anyone to carry out Long Island iced tea from a bar unless they're going to another part of their bar or another part of their premises that's licensed. So basically they're jeopardizing if they're, so I guess if the person, a patron might get cited for having an open container outside of the licensed premises. So if the licensed premises is delineated in some fashion somewhere, and they're outside of that, then that would be the responsibility. That's just like having an open container on the street, and they would be cited if the bar, if they violated any laws in terms of selling outside of their premise area, or any other liquor violations, then, they're jeopardizing revoking the expansion, and they're also jeopardizing their normal license. So, it does basically say it could be revoked. So that's basically the teeth that are there. I guess I'm not sure if I answered all of your questions.
Real quick follow-up. And I alluded to this before in the previous committee meeting, the State Supreme Court case, Wisconsin Dells v. Town of Del Prairie, where the court found that the original application for premises was paramount in terms of for when a premises or when an establishment comes for a relicense, or when they re-up their license the next time, the municipality cannot change that premises. It's their right. There's a stronger level of right within. What I don't want to do is throw you on the spot with a specific court case. No. But if we start doing premises extensions like this, is there now a value to that where, like, say next year, if we don't want to do this program, we don't have the ability to deny a reapplication for a premises extension? In your legal opinion, like I said, not necessarily specifically citing this court case, but I mean, are we authorizing something more than just what we kind of want to try and potentially remedy with allowing, people to socially distance or whatever? Is there a greater level of, I guess, I don't know, property value to this?
We have talked about this on my League of Wisconsin Municipalities Attorneys listserv, and the consensus, the overwhelming consensus is that since if you can look at the application, we specifically lay out that this is temporary, it's going to expire at a certain time, At the expiration, the premises was going to return to the description identified, or, the original description. And the feeling is that as long as that's stressed, that's in the agreement, that's basically a condition of the expansion of the premises, that there should be no issue with someone relying on that, on the Wisconsin Dells case, and to basically say that they have attained a property right that then, or, they have the protections of renewal at that same premises. So I think that's pretty much what we've been advised by the league and what other municipalities are doing, so.
All right, I had Jake Catnall that asked to speak next.
Thank you. I'm in favor of the open container ordinance being suspended. I think that days and times are reasonable. My concern would be with the applications to the clerk's office for specific businesses is that it gets confusing for patrons of what business might have submitted an application and which ones didn't. And I think in this time of crisis, you're seeing mental health issues spike, you're seeing anxiety spike. People are going to the bars anyway, and I feel that this would be a good opportunity for them to be able to social distance without being directly next to each other within a confined space. So because of the confusion that could be for patrons and how the system works, like, for example, if you were at a local establishment and you wanted to walk across the street to a park after you had purchased a drink there, where does the line cross there? And I feel like if we get into the spot where we don't have something where we just open it up or not open it up, there's going to be too many complications, as was spoken about earlier. So I'm in favor of suspending it. I think that we do have the power to take it back if we do find that's an issue. So at this point, I would love to see people out and about and enjoying themselves this summer. So those are my thoughts. Thank you.
Did anyone else want to speak on this issue? Chief, go ahead.
Greetings. I didn't have a chance to absorb what Sue gave us just recently, but from what I read earlier today, I have a concern that this is going to be very hard to police if we don't have some very clear and concise rules as to how this is going to work. I did say I was going to throw you on the spot, Alicia, so I'm going to. I'm going to use an example of the downtown area. The footprint of door 212 is where if she wants to have an outdoor extension, they need to stay in that footprint. We can't have folks drinking beer and hanging out in the sidewalks in front of Accounting Advantage. I believe that that's unfair to those businesses. I think it'll cost them customers. So we need to be we need to keep those folks in mind too, that when we're making this decision that we're not infringing on other businesses' rights. Again, I think that this needs to stay within the footprint of the business somehow. We can't, I'm absolutely against people wandering the streets with open alcohol. So, bottom line.
Anyone else? Go ahead, Scott.
We received this ordinance tonight. I agree with Jake with regard to this ordinance, but if they extend their premise, are they cordoning off that area? I mean, is it part of the requirements that if they apply for this, they have to cordon off the area that's the extension, so people understand that that's the perimeter in which they can drink? I don't know.
Well, they have to provide a plan in terms of exactly, or a description of the area, plan of physical distancing, security plan. So I think it doesn't specifically say that in here. If you go to what Point is doing, Point actually, as part of their plan, what they did, three things. They have these things, which we actually have in our ordinance too, but no one has done it yet, is these parklets where if someone has some parking spaces in front of their, public parking spaces in front of their tavern, they could get a permit from us to build like a deck or some type of a temporary structure and actually serve food and alcohol in that area. And generally, those were, under our ordinance and under Point's ordinance, would have to be somehow cordoned off or delineated somehow. Point just voted to not require that, and to basically to allow the bars to expand their premises into parking areas and not have to do that. I think, as I said, it's just a temporary thing that they're doing. The other thing they're doing is suspending the open container, but just for a limited area, the downtown area. And the third thing was something with sidewalk cafes, I want to say. I think not requiring or allowing parking lanes or parking spaces for sidewalk cafes, I think. But, so, the ordinance doesn't specifically state that it has to be delineated.
Well, it seems to me, if they could be in parking spaces, there's through traffic, and it might be a concern with regard to safety. And then if you, like, if two taverns were together or restaurants, they can cordon off the common area for both of them. If you're a single bar, that area. But I just think it creates confusion with regard to people going beyond a certain area.
But if you suspend the open container, then people are walking in the street and walking in the parking areas and walking on the sidewalk. And, I mean, I guess you're saying that's, so then there's no confusion because people can wander wherever.
No, I'm suggesting cordoning off.
Oh, okay.
The extension that you're
Right.
requesting, that if it is in some parking places, then it's cordoned off, so
Right.
with regard to safety and cars
Right.
going through that area. That's the only concern I have.
Did you have something, Jennifer?
I was just going to mention that when we do premises extensions, we usually ask them to fence off the area, but I don't know in this ordinance. I mean, I think Attorney Schill said that wasn't in there, but that's definitely something you could put in there. But that's not open container, that would be premises extension.
Right.
Because they can't cordon off a street, part of a street or a sidewalk if we suspend open container, then they can go anywhere that's public property. So, and then it comes to whose parking lot is this? Is this private? Is this public? Who owns it?
Yeah.
So I think it gets a little muddier when you want to just suspend open container. The other thing is, Sue, did you want to talk about like the parking lot premises extension? Is that something you wanted to mention or not?
Yeah, the other issue with just suspending the open container and not expanding the premises is it might be difficult for some bar owners to have their patrons move from their bar to a place, I mean, not everyone has their bar, and then right outside the door is the public area where the container, the open container might be suspended. There might be a door opening of the bar that's not included in like a foyer, but not, covered or anything, that is not included in their premises. So then legally, that person can't get from their establishment to where the suspension of the open container is without basically violating the law and having alcohol where it shouldn't be. So they're kind of there's that issue. And then the other issue is when you suspend the open container, it can only be for beer. And it also, once someone leaves, because it's just like you're doing a carry-out, like you're buying a six-pack at the bar and carrying it out. anytime you walk out, you can walk out with a six-pack, or you can actually open the six-pack and walk out with it, but once you get outside the bar, you can't go back in with it, because it's a carryout, and you can't then bring, you can't bring light beer back into the establishment, so even though you purchase it there, so it's kind of a quirky situation in terms of the, and that's why what I'm suggesting is, well, then it gives more flexibility somewhat, for the people to control their premises and have alcohol or have beer and intoxicating liquor, and then they're somewhat in control of that area. But it's, just a different way of doing it, and it's,
I guess my concern is that we don't know what we don't know. And once we implement, if you go for several months, it seems to me that if we implement this and have it for a month, and then revisit it with the chief and look at the situation, maybe we would introduce it for the next few months with some changes. But to say we're going to introduce this for 3 or 4 months and then find that there's some consequences that we didn't think about because we're first seeing it tonight, and I agree with what Sue's mentioning, but I'd like to suggest that it might be a month that we do this and then revisit it and make changes that would be appropriate for the remainder of the summer into the fall, if that's the case.
Actually, when I put this referral in, the intent was for social distancing, not to turn Wisconsin Rapids into 1880 Deadwood. We have a lot of different bars. If you think about it, we have one that's, well, actually a couple places that serve alcohol down by Walmart. We have a couple on the west side of town along West Grand Avenue going out of town. We have bars not too far from where I live down on First Street. And I want to try to find, we're also coming up on a major summer holiday with the 4th. And the last thing I want to do with COVID-19 is not to take away from the bars downtown, but so all the bars have a crack at the business too, is I don't want to cram 2,500 people downtown into a confined space. I understand what Chief said about not letting this get carried away and having people roam about with open containers. I guess my thoughts are, is maybe look at focusing on doing something for the 4th of July only tonight, and then if we have too many questions on this, we're going to have another committee meeting on the 7th of July, where maybe we can take and iron stuff out, and by then, by that first committee meeting, we might have some good data from the police department, how the 4th of July went, if there was a lot of problems with what action we might take tonight, or if there was no problems at all. Tom, I saw you moving over there before I started. Did you have something to say, Tom?
Well, I'm not quite sure where the hell to start, I'll tell you that one. The discussion about it, I guess, is fine. To see this tonight for the first time and to talk about it, I guess, is fine. If anybody is in their right mind, I don't know how you could vote on anything tonight without having time to think about it, unless you want to sit here till 2 in the morning so we can we'll resolve the problems that there could be. You talk about Deadwood, well, one of the emails, I'm not dealing with this subject even, I said about turning Rapids into Dodge City with Matt Dillon. So this is going to take a lot of thought and consideration. Because if you do this on a temporary basis, I really see no reason it can't be on a permanent basis. And I'm pretty sick and tired of these people. We want to get people back out, but now we got to make exceptions where they can go to, because they can't all be in this place. I don't think it's the city's responsibility to be providing all these extra spaces for this to take place. The people can be out and socialize, walk together 6 feet apart, all around town. You just can't drink. And I realize that's what it's about, it's the business. So don't give me all the crap about getting out and social distancing, because you can do that without the liquor. So again, as I guess what's become part of my thing in the last few months is get real, people. Come up with something that's real, not phony baloney. This is a joke and a farce and whatever else you want to call it. If you're expecting to make a decision tonight just to accommodate the 4th of July that we canceled the fireworks for, this is unreal. Absolutely unreal. And like I said, to discuss it is one thing. This was first thrown in front of me after the meeting started. My first look at it. The email came along with it. Now, realistically, I've seen things pushed through this chamber over 4 decades. This is going to be a record speed if this goes through tonight. This will be setting a record. I just can't believe that I'm sitting here listening to this. I came down for this meeting because I thought I was going to learn something. Boy, am I learning something. And I've sat through a lot of these meetings in 40 years. You might as well taken up, both the couple items here together. And if you have a bar to extend it, you don't want me to get going on redoing West Grand Avenue and how the parking was to be or shouldn't be done, with a fear of that they're going to have extended bar premises out under the sidewalk. It's not wide enough for people who just want to walk through to a different establishment, or they're just walking. A lot of thought's got to be given to this, to me anyway, and especially when you're talking about this city-wide. If there was a block that was being picked out or something, maybe something different, maybe. But forever, all over town, yeah, you might as well create a Deadwood or Dodge City, because that's about what you're doing. And then 3 days a week, and then maybe every day of the week. Why the hell even have a time limit on it? Just have whatever the bar is open. Get real. And I know everybody's sick and tired of this COVID-19. Part of the reason some states have kept it somewhat under control, and ours is going up, is that we were more cautious. And yes, some will say now we're letting people outside, so that's being cautious. I'll bet you the outside, the people are going to be probably closer together, or as close together as they would be inside the bar, except they're going to be outside. Because they ain't going to stand 6 feet apart and talk. So give a lot of thought to this, people, tonight, and I, whatever, I guess, I would surely recommend that that you take it home and think about it some more, and not vote on it, whatever you might think is right tonight, and not a practice run on the 4th of July. And not to try it for a month and see if it's right or not. That's why you take time to think about things at times, so you get as right as you can. So I guess, Mr. Chairman, that's all I'll have to say for now, because this again will be at the council meeting when we get there.
Thanks, Tom. Any other requests to speak on this item? Taking in consideration of a lot of Tom's points, I would be in favor of holding the bulk of this item over until our regularly scheduled Property and Finance Committee meeting, so we can, a lot of the questions that come up here could get answered. But before I make a motion, just want to ask, Tom, can I ask you a question? Part of this that we talked about tonight for other bars with the 4th coming up that want to ask for a premise extension to go out into their parking lots, how would you feel about making a motion to allow the city clerk to grant the premise extension on the case-by-case basis?
Again, it's a one of, how far do we really want to go into extending into public property? And I realize there are taverns that are cramped for space. Some aren't attached to a parking lot. It's somewhat who comes from, I guess, from a liberal point of view, that restrict from the use of public property. The owner of the establishment, that's where they decided to open their business. And, like I said, there's reasons why we canceled the fireworks. And then should we be in the business opening public property to do part of what we canceled? Because the fireworks weren't just the fireworks, it's went on all with it. So I'd have to think about that between now and the council meeting in a half hour, but, I don't think we'd have that many places on the 4th of July that are going to apply to do that, because it's getting pretty late to do it anyway. So, it's something I'd think about, but again, when you heard what I was saying earlier, so I'll think about it.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, I would ask to hold item number 3 over to the regular scheduled Property and Finance Committee meeting on July 7th, so we can look at this ordinance a little bit more and get some of the questions that were asked here tonight answered. But in the interim, I would make a motion to grant the power to the city clerk to extend premises on a case-by-case basis for the 4th of July holiday.
I'll second that motion. The reason I'm seconding it is I think it does provide an opportunity for the restaurants. I mean, we keep talking about bars, but restaurants and bars. And it gives us a sense of what the extensions would be so that when we meet on the 7th, we have a better sense of this ordinance. And we don't have to pass the ordinance then. But it'll give us a trigger as to should we continue for the remainder of the summer. Otherwise, we don't, like, as I said before, we don't know what we don't know. So if we did it for the 7th, and they have to apply for extension, we'll get a sense of it. And I think we talk about we want to support businesses, and this is, we're supporting businesses. And I do believe, people that go to the bars and so forth, going outside is much more advantageous than to be in the bar and close to one another. Now, they could be close to each other outside, but it's outside. I don't know, I just would like to suggest that to be on the 7th for now, and then review it on the 4th, and on the 7th, revisit it to see what changes we should make, if we have to just say no, but it'll give us a sense of it. So that's where I'm coming from, so I'll second that.
Right. We have a motion and second on the floor. Is there any other further discussion on this item?
Just for a point of clarification, and Ms. Gossett brought that up in terms of in the past, whenever there's been like a temporary extension, probably mostly from a nonprofit, kind of like on item number 6 that we're going to be doing, it was suggested that the organization or whoever else is applying for the extension has to tape off the area, put a snow fence around or whatever. Is this going to continue to apply? Are we going to say either if you guys are granted this extension, then there is going to be this footprint and your patrons are going to know it and they're going to overwhelmingly know it because we're going to set up a perimeter that they can't violate. And if they do, they're going to get kicked off the property and not be able to participate. So, I mean, do we have any rules set for this particular motion?
I don't believe we do, but I believe, Chief, would you suggest having defined, with the recommendation of the police chief, having defined boundaries would be helpful to incorporate into this as well? Any?
Is that what we're doing? Is that what we're voting on? What are we voting on here?
To give the clerk's office the, up through the 4th for anyone else that may ask for an extension, the ability to approve that application.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairperson. I do understand what the words are for your motion, but do we have a policy document? I mean, are we going to be following the previous, or are we just, anybody that comes in, as long as you can fill out the paperwork properly, then you're granted? I mean, and then by case basis, is it just on a technicality that someone would be denied, or is it because this has got to be confusing for tavern owners too when they come down to the clerk's office, because it's like, all right, what do we do?
Sue, I believe we ran into this issue last year with the Downtown on Tap affair. Wasn't there a state provision that the premise extensions have to be fenced off, roped off?
Well, in that instance, what they do is each of the bars extended their premises out to the sidewalk, and then it was a suspension of the open container for the entire area. So that's Downtown on Tap isn't, and the extensions that each of the taverns did was just, like for instance, Jennings, where you look at Jennings and the facade, and the building is set back, and that's private property from the edge of the sidewalk to the door. Well, that isn't part of their premises. They just have the building, the first floor, or the first and second floor. So they extend their premises to get premises to get to the sidewalk, and then there's the suspension of the open container from the sidewalk forward. But I guess I have the same question of, are you saying that the clerk should then follow this proposed ordinance, but only for July 4th? So everything that's in that proposed ordinance regarding the review and so on, is it the rules, or is it back to what we would usually do, which really wouldn't necessarily include public property, but it would be more just expanding their own private property and extending it outside their premises? So, yeah, I'm unclear, too, as to what would be the regulations that she would work under. I mean, it could be what I've put together with the inclusion of the cordoning off of the additional area, and then whether that would include public property or not. I guess that would be another question.
Just sitting here with, even on this, with the amount of unanswered questions that I can't even answer myself, I'm just think that this isn't going to work as much as I would want it to do, so I will withdraw my motion. And just hold everything over until the July 7th Property and Finance Committee meeting before we proceeded anything else. For the sake of doing something so people aren't congregating in one spot, I hope that we can work something out by then, but I don't see anything working out by the 4th, so I'll just move on from that. Scott?
I'm afraid I agree, but I'm afraid if we just table it until the 7th, we'll be having the same discussion. I mean, I think we came up with some good points. I'd just like to entertain the idea that if we did pass this, could we suggest for restaurants and bars to come up with a tentative proposal as to what their extension would be, so we know what we're talking about? Otherwise, we're going to be, I can see on the 7th, we're going to have the same discussion, same issues, and we won't know what we don't know. And if we know what extensions would be in the city, then we'll have a sense of what it would look like and sound like to be able to make a decent decision on the 7th. That's the only concern I have.
Thank you. Anyone else? I understand what you're saying, Scott, but there's just, Tom said it and Thad said it, there's just too many, we made a lot of progress on it, but there's just too many questions and too many definitions that we don't have at this time, and I don't want to put the police department in a bad position on the 4th of July either, because they're going to have their hands full enough. I don't want to put ERMS guys in the position to have to, work with boundaries that aren't clearly defined, and I don't want to put bar owners in a bad situation on the other end of it either, where they jeopardize their license because something happens that we weren't 100% clear on. So as much as it'd be nice to get it done for the 4th, maybe it's just best to leave it for right now.
Well, I agree with the decision. All I'm saying is that we don't know what the taverns or the bars will set for their extension and parameters. When we get together on the 7th, we're going to have the same discussion and not knowing what we're talking about with what certain bars would like to have and so I'm wondering maybe it's a crazy idea if restaurants and bars would come in with a proposal to the city clerk as if they did an extension, this is what it would look like. And then we would have an idea of what the proposal would be. I agree. If we just received this tonight, there's too many unanswered questions, but that's just my suggestion, that if we could just have some idea on the 7th as to what the taverns and restaurants would want, then we'll have a sense that should we agree to pass this or not. That's the only thing. Maybe it's complicated to do that.
All right.
Well, and I think that's what the whole question is, Scott, is that we need to set those parameters first. Because then what our parameters are set, then when a bar or restaurant comes into the clerk's office and says, hey, we want to do this, because it is a fact that in the premises extension, the business has to explain where it's going to be. So if we have that perimeter first, then they come in and say, well, we just wanted 4 feet in front of the door, just on the balcony, that's acceptable because our parameters are set. Or they say, we want the whole street down to the next block, and then, no, that's not acceptable because the parameters were already set. So that's where I was kind of with that. So, but it is a fact that they have to outline what if they did want it, they would have to bring that in. But we got to be the ones to set that standard first.
All right, any further discussion on item number 3? Hearing none, we'll move on to item number 4. Consider a request from Door 212 LLC, doing business as Door 212, Lee Chipman.
So there was no motion to bring it back July 7th?
I did table it till July 7th. We didn't make a motion on it.
Okay. So am I preparing anything for July 7th? Or,
I'll make a motion to postpone it to the next regularly scheduled Finance Committee meeting.
I'll second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, committee will vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Ayes have it. All right. Item number 4 is consider a request from Door 212 LLC, doing business as Door 212, Lee Chipman Agent, located at 212 West Grand Avenue, for a temporary extension of their alcohol premises to include their entryway and sidewalk directly in front of their premises, and street closure and suspension of the open container ordinance on West Grand Avenue between 2nd Avenue and 3rd Avenue, including sidewalks but not including intersections, on Saturday, July 4th, 2020, from 4 p.m. till 2 a.m. to allow the public to socially distance for the 4th of July holiday. Alicia Goldan from 212 is here. Would you like to come up to the podium and speak?
Okay. Do I just say why I want to do the street closure?
If you would, please.
For the 4th of July, I just want to close the road down to advertise social distancing so people can still celebrate and not get in trouble for the 4th of July. Last year, I came down here and fought for a suspension of open container as well. We cleaned the block up. We had extra garbage cans out. We didn't have any problems last year. So if I can't get the road closure, I'm at least hoping for open container on the sidewalks. So I think that's it.
Are you planning on any events to like draw in extra business for the 4th of July, like having a band or?
We'd like to have a DJ, but that'll depend on what happens here. But not any, like, we don't have food or anything planned, no.
Does anyone else have any questions for Alicia? Thad?
I don't have any real specific questions in terms of on your request, but it is a case where we've had private, this, and we talked about this last month and the month before when we talked about a premises extension. And there was another place that had requested it. And to anybody's knowledge, we have not done it in the public right-of-way before, or allowed a private business to do that. I'm not opposed to this, but one of the things that someone that is doing it on their own property, for example, like Johnny's, when they do it, they're assuming all costs and everything else. Now, if we have a road closure, and this may be a question that we need to answer, and cleanup and everything else, there's obviously got to be barricades and other enforcement for that. Is the business actually going to be responsible for those costs? It's a case where, although I understand in this situation that businesses are hurting as well, but taxpayers are going to be hurting too, especially into next year when shared revenue is going to be cut, transportation aids are going to be cut because the state has been losing revenue as well. So I guess the question that I got for you is if there were fees imposed of actual costs that came back, and I'm not talking about penalties or fines or anything like that, but what it costs for our public works crew to come down, put barricades in, are you willing to pay those costs?
I was told just the fencing, I thought. I was not aware of the barricades.
Go ahead, Jennifer.
I just,
So she originally submitted a special event application. By the way, the DJ wasn't on there, so that's not on the agenda tonight. And as we looked at it, it's more a premises extension and open container suspension with a street closure. So what I told you was that barricades up to 6 are free of charge. After that, you pay for the 7th and above. And then she is responsible for putting up the fencing for the premises extension. That's a cost that's on her, not on the city. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it actually does. I didn't realize that we had a policy as far as 6 barricades firsthand. So anything after that, there is a fee. And do we have a policy as far as that goes?
We do. That's what's on the current special event app. We are redoing that, as you know, so that's something that you can take a look at if you want to change that.
Go ahead, Alicia.
and the DJ wasn't going to be like in the road. Like, we just planned on having music. And we did write in one of the little boxes, I put that I would like to have a DJ, but not like in the road, but it was definitely written down. What? Yes. Yeah, not like in the street. Yeah. That's what we did last year, and he put like 2 speakers right out under my awning. That's right there. But it was pouring rain, so it didn't really do much.
Go ahead, Jennifer.
The other thing that they typically, we ask for, and this goes back to Alderperson Kellogg's question about where the premises extension, what that includes. We do require, as you can see in the description here, we know exactly where she wants to extend her premises, and she did also include a map with the special event app, which I did not include in the packet, so sorry about that, but she did delineate on the map where she wants this, and that is something we also require. We don't usually bring this to Finance and Property without the map.
Anyone else have any?
May I speak?
Yeah, go ahead, Jay.
Sure. So just a couple comments here, and I'll go back to what I said earlier. I think now more than ever we need outside social distancing when people want to enjoy themselves on the 4th of July, which they are going to. So I'm completely in favor of this, and since I've lived in Rapids, we've had outside 4th of July events my entire life, whether that be over on the east side of the river in front of what is now Jennings. So I don't understand why we wouldn't approve this. So I hope this goes through, because this has been part of the Rapids culture, especially on the 4th of July, for decades. Thank you.
Scott, do you have something?
Yeah, I have a few concerns. Basically, we're closed in West Grant for a significant amount of time, and then it goes to 2 a.m., why not 12? And then why West Grand? Why can't it be 2nd Avenue? I mean, it's like closing 8th Street. I mean, it's a main thoroughfare. It's not a side street. And we're going to close that. And I think what we decided on number 3 creates this a moot issue. I mean, we just had a long discussion with regard to extensions of property and so forth. And now, in this particular case, we're saying we should. And so the issues of Grand Avenue, the issue of time, and the issue of we didn't pass number 3, then why are we passing number 4? That's the only concern I have.
Go ahead, Alicia.
Okay, so this is my first time filling the application out. So last year, I mean, the aqua skiers didn't do their big thing, so it wasn't such a big deal, and we didn't have COVID going on. So West Grand was still technically being closed down with the open suspension. So that's kind of what I went based off of. I would be, okay, and again, it was my first time, so I put 4 to 2. I would be okay with 11 or midnight, and I'd be okay with Second Avenue. But again, it was my first time. I was just a couple options. I would be fine with the sidewalk. I just was trying to make a outline, I guess.
Yeah, that's the issues I have. I agree with Jake about having it outside, but if it's over on Second Avenue, and if it's not on Grand Avenue and West Grand and closing that down, I can see when we had the 4th of July and the bridge was closed
Right.
and all the others, and hopefully next year we'll be able to do that.
Right.
But in this particular case, we're not going to have the fireworks, and why are we closing Grand Avenue? But to change it to Second Avenue and the time span, rather than 2 o'clock. I'm thinking of the residents in the area and so forth. I mean, when we had the 4th of July, the fireworks are at 9 o'clock and 9:30, and I think going back to 11 o'clock as to the second issue that we had, or third issue we had tonight was 11 o'clock, then maybe this would be 11 o'clock. So I don't know if that would be changed, or if she's willing to make those changes, if the committee wants to entertain that idea, something to think about.
Just as long as Chief's still here. Chief, do you have any input in on this?
We had a side discussion before the meeting where I'd be much happier if we did not close Grand, and if we kept it, say, midnight, 2 in the morning on the 4th of July.
Sue, did you?
Right, I guess then the question is, the people from her establishment, won't be able to get to the place where the premises is, or the open container is suspended. So,
They would, I believe they would be able to if they took the sidewalk heading east past Gary's Coin and Stamp to Second Avenue is where Scott suggested the closing, because then that would be
like
the,
along River Block?
yeah.
Okay, so then so then you'd have to take her, right, it's.
Her
suspension would not be what's in here.
delineated area would go eastbound on West Grand Avenue, past Gary's Coin and Stamp, to the adjacent corner of Second Avenue and Second Avenue to Jackson Street, if she changed it from West Grand Avenue.
Okay.
Yeah,
You follow that?
yeah. So it'd be this sidewalk going down towards door 212, right?
Yep,
And then it'd be left, that
yep,
part is, okay.
yep, because if you walk out your door and you take a left, you're
Yep.
facing east, so you'd go eastbound to that corner, and then where Alderperson Kellogg suggested is using
Yep.
Second Avenue. Anyone else have any questions for Alicia? I was in contact with Alicia on this issue. I told her that I do not feel comfortable trying to do anything where we're going to have people downtown, a lot of the same points that Alderperson Rayholm brought up, but I feel the decision should be made by 8 people, so this item will go to the full council, obviously. Alicia, would you be willing to amend your application to Second Avenue then, and your hours from 4 PM to midnight for your delineation?
Absolutely.
Okay. I would make a motion to approve the premise extension for Door 212 LLC with the changes of no closure on West Grand Avenue, but to change the delineated area from the sidewalk outside of Door 212 east, crossing Second Avenue to the sidewalk of the River Block building, parallel to Second Avenue to the intersection of Second Avenue and Jackson Street for the hours of 4 PM till 12 AM on Saturday, July 4th, 2020.
I think you just need to get her to that corner, because we're not going to, she's not going to be responsible for what happens on the street or the other sidewalk. I think the main thing is for her people to get to where the suspension would be, which would be the sidewalk along Second Avenue, as well as the street on Second Avenue. And I don't think we own the sidewalk to the east, right? Isn't that owned by the county, Paul, so. Yeah, so actually, that area isn't going to be, but do you know what I'm saying? She just has to get to the corner by Gary's Coin, because then that sidewalk along Gary's Coin on the east side will be part of the open container suspension.
So is there open container on the 4th of July already?
Not citywide.
No,
Oh, just down, I'm confused as to why I would only need to the corner
Well,
then.
because then your people can then walk in with their, out with their beer into the open container area. Otherwise, you'd have to extend your premises to the entire street.
Gotcha.
And I don't think they're willing to do that, nor would I recommend that, so.
Okay.
Did he get to that yet? It would be Second Avenue. Well, it would be Second Avenue, but Second Avenue does not include the parking spaces and the sidewalk to the east of Second Avenue. I mean, it's kind of,
Okay,
Go ahead, Jennifer.
one thing about the premises extension is that the business is responsible for what happens on that premises. Once you get to the open container suspension, that's on the city. So that's the delineation. Alicia, that's why we get you to that corner. And then if the open container is suspended at that point in the street and that one sidewalk, that's not your responsibility. Does that make sense?
It makes sense, but I'm just clarifying, are they granting open container on the 4th of July?
Not for everybody, from what I've heard. But part of this request is to suspend open container on Second Avenue, correct? And the sidewalk on the west side?
That's what you,
Correct.
yes.
And how far into the street can you go? Can you do the whole street? Can you
well,
do,
you can do the whole street, but the street only goes to a certain period, which is probably not marked.
so how, do you have to barricade that then? Because people might spill over into that and the side, I'm just trying to figure out what I need to do as far as paperwork on my end.
I do believe on Second Avenue, between the parking lot on the county building and the road, you can see where there's like a concrete gutter there. And that would define as a boundary of where Second Avenue ends and the parking lot for the county building begins. And with Alicia getting the 6 barricades from the city, they should be able to put barricades up by Second in Jackson and Second in West Grand Avenue. And then if there's some rope or beach fence or something that you could run along that curb on Second Avenue, you could have that signed off that there was no alcohol past that fenced or roped off point on Second Avenue. Go ahead, Alicia.
Would it be way easier just to get the sidewalk for open container? Because I will do that. I will walk the block like I did last year. I will make sure everything's cleaned up, swept. I will put out extra garbage cans. I don't want to make it more complicated and make my chances even slimmer. I just want a little something because I don't have a parking lot. I don't have a patio. I just want a little bit more room. I will clean it up just like I did last year.
Go ahead, Jennifer.
So the sidewalk in front of your bar to where?
That whole Meadwitter building, probably.
Okay, so all along West Grand
Yeah,
Avenue,
so technically from Gary's to Trading Post.
but just the north sidewalk?
If it
On
would
the
make
north
it
side of the street.
easier, yes.
Make sense?
Makes sense. So I'll rescind the original motion and I'll make it a motion to grant open container on, sorry, Sue?
She's probably extending her alcohol premises then to that area, right? I mean, otherwise,
So-
if it's suspending open container, then it's still public. Anyone can come and go on that sidewalk. And then, and people can't come and go from your bar to the sidewalk. So
So this could
However you-
either be a premises extension from the bar out the entryway, because the entryway is not included in the premises description. So she'd have to extend from the door, or from the bar, through the doorway, the entryway, to the sidewalk. Then you could suspend open container on that one section of sidewalk that goes from Second to Third Avenue.
All right,
Or you could consider extending her premises, entryway, and the complete sidewalk. Correct, Sue? Is that what you're saying?
Right.
But then that all has to be fenced off, and that's yours to monitor. So people can't come in except from your bar if you do the premises extension. If it's open container, anybody can.
Right.
Make sense?
makes sense. Alicia, hearing those options, which would you prefer?
The first option, just extending my entryway and then putting open container on the sidewalk. I just don't want to make it more complicated. Like I said, I'm willing to walk and clean up, but I don't know how much time I have to try and put everything else together.
I don't,
So if we have open container on that sidewalk only, how do you keep people out of the street? Because she's only required to fence if her premises is extended, because she has to control that area according to her liquor license. So if we make it open container, somebody's on the sidewalk, if they step into the street, now they're breaking our ordinance. So how do we delineate that?
plus no one from your bar can take something out and come back in if that sidewalk is suspended with open container, nor can anyone take intoxicating liquor or mixed drinks out onto the sidewalk.
Right, I'm aware we went through this a little bit last year, but I guess what you were just explaining, like, if someone's standing on the sidewalk and they go onto the road, I guess it's no different than any other weekend when you do catch some people that are out walking with a drink or something, you know, I mean, Brad's down there all the time, and he's gave people tickets. I guess that's on, not their own discretion, but their own chance, I guess. They take walking out in the road with a drink.
Alicia, what they're asking for is to know that they can have the beverage on the sidewalk, but they can't take it into the street, which would put you back in the position of barricading. And as was previously explained by the clerk, in your request, you get the six barricades. So my recommendation would be is if there was a barricade for open container put at the west end of the sidewalk by the trading post and the east end of the sidewalk by Gary's Coin and Stamp, and then barricades intermittently in between there, and like just a rope run through those barricades with a sign, no alcohol past this point.
Right.
Would that suffice and cover definition of the open container area?
That's okay with me. Chief? Okay.
All right. Third time's a charm. We'll try this again. I will make a motion to suspend open container along the north sidewalk on West Grand Avenue from the intersection of 3rd Avenue to 2nd Avenue from the hours of 4 p.m. to 12 a.m. on July 4th, 2020, with the north and south sides of the sidewalk to be barricaded and 4 other barricades to be placed intermittently, and the bar owner will get some rope and rope off in between the barricades and mark the area no alcohol beyond this point.
And a premises extension from the bar
And a
out the entryway
and
to
a
the
premise-
sidewalk.
And to include a premise extension from the bar door to the sidewalk.
I don't know what's happening. So confused.
till midnight.
So you have a motion, I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion and second on the floor. Is there any further discussion? Alicia, so this is to approve the premise extension that you've asked for in the
Okay.
sidewalk or the open container suspension?
Okay, so do I need to refill out that application, or,
No, that'll be amended,
okay,
all right? All right,
okay.
thank you for coming down. Any further discussion? Hearing none, committee will vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes have it. Item number 5 is consider a request from Central Rapids LLC doing business as La Taqueria, Luis Ramon Melendez, agent located at 1345 8th Street South for a Class B beer and Class B liquor license.
How's it going, guys? My name is Luis. This is Oscar. He'll be my general manager. So yeah, I just kind of want to update you, I guess, what happened with us over the last few months. Us, business owners, patrons, police, city officials, we've been put in situations that were unforeseen. And, everything's kind of going on, so I understand why it's a little crazy right now. I received a call from Jen a few weeks ago, right? Last month. At the time, I was busy. We were reopening up our location in Wausau, so I have one location already. And I just kind of missed the meeting, and I understand, what happened. So today I'm reapplying for that liquor license that we had been approved for initially, so.
All right, does anyone have any questions for Luis? There was, yeah, go ahead, Jennifer.
So they were approved for the license back in December or January, but then they didn't open. So we never issued that license. And it's only good through June 30th, and then they had to do a renewal. I think that's what you were talking about, Luis. The renewal paperwork, it did not make it to the, it did not make it to the Finance and Property meeting for the renewals because they weren't open, they, didn't make it. So what they're doing now, if you don't renew it, you have to start over. So they're asking to be approved again for the Class B license, combo license, starting July 1st. The paperwork has to be to the clerk's office by law. It has to be 15 days prior to it being considered by council. We don't have enough days this month to make that 15 days. So it can be considered here, but then it can't be approved tonight by council. It's going to have to go to the July meeting. So, but then if there's a special council meeting earlier in July, it could be considered then. So I suggested we put it on the agenda tonight so that it could be approved by Finance and Property so that when council meets, it's ready to go. Does that make sense?
Makes
So
sense.
it's a new license.
Do you understand that?
I understand, yeah.
Okay. There was no recommendation to deny the license, so I will make a motion to approve the license for La Taqueria, Luis Ramon Melendez, agent for the premises located at 1345 8th Street South for the Class B beer and Class B liquor license.
I'll second it.
We have a motion and second. Is there any other further discussion?
You guys are aware that you cannot serve alcohol until the next council meeting when this is approved, right?
Correct.
So I don't know when your opening date is. I hope you open sooner than later.
Right,
But-
so kind of something thinking the last couple of days, with this meeting coming up kind of so fast on me. Our plan to open is July 6th. It was, things just have happened. So I guess with the timeline wise, I understand we would serve alcohol whenever after the finance meeting is, so.
It'd be the common council meeting, which,
Or
because
sorry.
now we're going to go into the 15-day waiting period. So Unless, like the clerk said, unless there's a special meeting 15 days from now, the soonest it'd be considered would be July 21st.
I guess I have a couple comments that I kind of just want to, and I understand I'm not arguing, but just, one is, if my plan is to have a soft opening, a private event, actually, on Friday the 3rd, to invite construction crews, everybody that's been involved in the project. It's last minute, but like something for a special event, like a request for alcohol for that day? Is that a possibility? And I understand the alcohol has to be taken off the premise, that night, just for that. I mean, it's to train my employees. I already spent, you don't even want to know on equipment and everything to get ready, and then it's like, I can't give everything. But it'd be like a showcase for that one evening,
Are you talking about in 2 days?
next Friday,
So,
the 3rd.
okay, well, if you pay for your license that would expire on the 30th, obviously you
Right,
could.
so I guess
You
I'm
could
asking for the
do
special.
something until the 30th, but then you're going to have to wait until council approves it. We
Right, I
can't give you a
understand that. I guess
You wouldn't qualify for a temporary license.
I was for a 1 day, for a 1 day.
No, because you weren't granted a license. You can't do a temporary one for 1 day without being approved. So you're unlicensed, so we can't do a special event. You have to be licensed in order for us to approve that.
I can,
Like
Correct.
churches
I
that
can
are on
talk to you
license?
after the meeting,
Okay.
or I can call you and we can talk about the nature of your event, and it might be considered a private event where you wouldn't need a license, but so let's talk about that
Yeah.
after
kinda
the meeting,
just
okay?
Like church picnics or, and then it's free, so there'll be nothing there, I guess. So,
Not to step in, but just for a little bit of a clarification, if it's a private party, completely private, then I think that's what Attorney Schill was talking about. You cannot get a temporary picnic license that a civic organization would get. That would be, you need to be a pro bono organization. A private business, especially a tavern, cannot do that open to the public.
Okay.
An event. But if it's a private deal where it's your own employees and a select group that you're going to have a list of people and you're going to have someone by the door, saying you can come in, you cannot come in, that that might be a
Right,
possibility.
as long as there's no charge, and you're not
Right.
charging those people.
right.
And
So,
it's not-
I guess, we
yeah.
can talk about that.
We can talk about that.
Yeah, that's all I have to say.
All right.
Yeah.
We have a motion and second on the floor. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Committee will vote. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes have it. Item number 6 is consider a
Thank you.
request. You're welcome. Item number 6 is consider a request from the Heart of Wisconsin Chamber of Commerce Incorporated, Angelina Whitehead, President, located at 1120 Lincoln Street for a temporary Class B license for a business after-hours event to be held at Alexander Field, 3620 First Street South on Monday, July 27th, 2020, from 4 PM to 7 PM. Is there anyone from the chamber here? Shane?
Obviously, I'm not from the chamber, but as the airport commission chairperson, it's going to be to open up, we're going to have the new hangar. So they're going to have a business after hours there so everybody can see and check out the new hangar.
How many people are they expecting to come there?
I do not know how large those events usually are, but it's a very large hangar,
All right,
multi-million-dollar hangar.
all right.
They vary based on the size of the building, but they usually don't have more than probably 40 people in there at a time. But throughout the night, it's almost like an open house. People come in and out.
Correct.
All right. All right, I'll send it up to council. I'll make a motion to approve the temporary Class B beer license for the business after hours event to be held at Alexander Field, 3620 First Street South on Monday, July 27th, from 4 PM to 7 PM.
So moved.
You go ahead, Tom.
I guess just a question, and Shane, and maybe I missed it and talk about the commission, because that hangar in that, or if it could be used for this. Wondering, I'm not saying I'm against it, but I know that there's discussion on how it could be used if, multi-million-dollar hangar could be used for private events and whatever.
So, yeah,
There's those discussions.
yeah, we've discussed it, and more or less it became that it's an airport hangar first, and that it needs to be used and be available for airplanes. So the ability to use it for receptions have been pushed off, and any further discussions would be during the non-season, but definitely not during the peak season of airplane rentals, which it was originally designed for. So we kind of tabled it for now.
So it would be, It's okay to use it for this, something like this?
Yeah, and it's more of an open house to highlight the
Okay.
hangar, not for, the business after hours is just the event, kind of showcase the open house, kind of. I don't know if we didn't talk about ribbon cutting at all.
All right, we had a motion and second on the floor. Any further discussion? Hearing none, committee will vote. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Ayes have it. Item number 7 is adjournment. Make a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
We have motion and second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All right.
All opposed? Ayes have it. We stand adjourned at 8:37 PM.